Recently, I was out on a porch of a cabin in the middle of the woods with nothing but the blinding darkness of a cloudy night and the deafening ringing in my ears amidst complete silence. I was simply looking out at the strange shadowy figures surrounding the cabin and rejoicing in this moment of stillness and peace when suddenly I found myself tearing up. Flashes from the past decade of my life were popping up, the moments, hardships, and above all, the people. Flashes. That's how everything is and will inevitably be, right? A flash. What I'm experiencing now has already one foot in the door to the past. Have you ever had the feeling that you will miss someone although they are still present and well? Is it possible to grieve something you haven't yet lost but inescapably will? Chopin's Nocturne, the same one you're hearing now, started playing in my head. An oddly similar feeling overcame me when I heard him for the first time. And Beethoven, and Liszt, and Sibelius. Still out on the porch of that cabin, something clicked. My solitude in the terrifying beauty of nature, its strange indifference in contrast to my innate care. The bright pathway of piano keys to eternity amidst complete darkness. At that moment, something revealed itself. The whole forest lit up and the shadowy figures turned out to be the trees. I understood, but when I looked up, it turned out to be just the moon peeking in from the clouds and it soon vanished. But that moment of absolute meaning remained. What do all those composers have to do with this? What secret do they hold? Romanticism. I would like to unravel this story by starting with Jean Sibelius The Trees number 5. The Trees, how fitting. Anyway, Sibelius was a romantic Finnish composer who lived an interesting life and is criminally underrated today, but I will not waste your time with his backstory to pad the runtime. The Trees number 5, or The Spruce, is both a perfect, wordless encapsulation of Romanticism itself and its meaning. And as we will see later on, Romanticism and words have a strange relationship. But this piano piece starts with a simple, almost too simple melody that is in no rush to fascinate you, as if the music is only beginning to sprout up, still fragile, unsure of what it will grow to. It reminds me of that scene from Ratatouille where Remy tries to explain taste to Emile.
Only think about the taste. See?
The sparse and hypnotizing progression continues for a while until suddenly the arpeggio notes come pouring out. Each has its individual role, each is unique. The whole picture is then of a chaotic unity, barely keeping together but nevertheless stunningly beautiful, an odd disunity of harmony. But just as it becomes almost overwhelming, it fizzles out just as suddenly as it started, and we're back to where we began. Now take this quote on the essence of humans from Nietzsche, quote, "By no extraordinary chance will such a marvelously picturesque piece of diversity and unity be ever put together a second time," end quote. Not bad for Sibelius, right? Apart from somehow managing to depict a forest with a piano, what with each note, tree playing its role in a chaotic but unified harmony, the forest, I think this short piece depicts our being itself. And if you're one of those people who think we can project anything onto art, you're boring, we will not be friends, please go away. Now, a question for the rest of us. Is life not exactly like this piece? We slowly enter being, taking our time while maturing until, before we know it, it all rushes past us uncontrollably and all at once. Eventually, we find ourselves just as we began. Is this not how life seems when looking back, and why the elderly are somehow so alike to children? And if you would like to look past the boundaries of our world, do we not spawn from the same place we eventually vanish back to? Perhaps not all of it, although I could go on and on, but crucially, nothing else in this world makes me wonder, like the Romantics, and all in 3 minutes, mind you. And the dimension of time is precisely which makes all of music stand out, for no other art form is quite as embedded in its fabric. But For me, the Romantics specifically caught lightning in a bottle by using the temporal combined with a masterful solo performance of a single instrument to access a realm beyond this world, like no others could. However, my previous video was on this topic, so I will not linger here and I will finally get to answering an important question. What is this romantic? Turns out, a tough question. Friedrich Schlegel once wrote to his brother, quote, "I cannot send you my explanation of the word romantic because it would be 125 sheets long," and that is enough said. It is also quite entertaining to read historians try with all their might and fail to arrive at any normal description of this movement. Take this monstrosity as an example, which I will not bother to read, so pause if you'd like. For the most part, I think it is because Romanticism is precisely that which disregards conceptualization and categorization. To be able to precisely pinpoint it would be its greatest insult, because the movement was born out of rebellion and the urge towards freedom and limitless imagination. Just as nature symbolically is akin to chaos, thus opposite of order, the same goes for the Romantics' love of trees, night, and the rest. Just as emotions are vague, water-like, more so colors than words, no different are the Romantics. Its emphasis is on individuality, so I think it is completely fair to say that Romanticism is Beethoven, Chopin, Liszt, Schubert, Dvorak, Sibelius, and the list continues. However, while I did mention all the most important aspects which vaguely unite most of, though not all of the Romantics, it still does no justice to it. In fact, no scholar or historian ever will, for they are antithetical to the very essence of Romanticism. Quote, "The scholar expends his entire strength in affirmation and denial, in criticizing what has already been thought. He himself no longer thinks." End quote. Well, that simply won't do. So finally, here is the magnificent meaning that shined forth to me on that porch thanks to Romantic. Forget technique, technology, and whatever else of the appearances of music. For me, Romantics cut straight to the core, so much so that I could not care less about the objective aspects of their work. What fascinates me about the music of Sibelius and the gang is that, unlike the kitsch, hollow, and plastic vomits of meaning that is much of what passes for art, Romantics completely embrace, to an unmatched degree, the complexity of our existence. As is commonly misunderstood, the Romantics do not hail beauty in a childishly naive, life is only beautiful sentiment. Actually, they're not even making claims, at least the composers. The unimaginative scholars do that for them. Rather, beauty is not their goal, but the result of the tension they embrace. Beauty comes about on its own and is that not beyond any verbal argument. However, the naivety of the Romantics is an important aspect to touch on. To be naive is to lack experience or wisdom, a natural feature of the young like myself. One usually progresses from naive to cynical when faced with the hardships of life. However, it is one thing to be naive and another to choose to remain naive regardless of harsh experience. How is insisting on the goodness, or really the possibility of goodness, a characteristic of the weak? An open heart makes you vulnerable to be hurt, but it is also the only way to love. I find no cowardice in such an approach, and surely much more bravery than in those walking with a hardened heart. And I think the Romantics grasp this with their insistence on the individual hero, a hero not like the brave but inaccessible Batman or Superman of today, but rather a fragile, emotional, and thus a misunderstood one. Guido from the brilliantly titled movie Life is Beautiful is a perfect example. If I could be so bold as to speak for it, Romanticism understood that human existence is a flower sprouting out of endless chaos. It lives right in the tension of our seemingly contradictory and incompatible polarity. And I want to read this part because I want to get it just right. It somehow touches the bliss of eternity without forgetting the heartbreaking grief of a mortal conscious being observing the passing of time. We are birth and death all at once. Whatever you give birth to, both symbolically and literally, is destined to vanish. That is why it is possible to grieve what you're currently experiencing, to know that you will miss someone who is still presently there. That is why some people cry during the happiest of moments. Conscious of it or not, we feel the heart-rending pain of our destiny. Whatever we touch on immediately begins the process of fading into the past. And that is the tragic role of humans and the meaning of our lives. We're active observers of the world, allowing beauty, it above all and despite the rest, to manifest. Thus, the meaning of life is not happiness or joy or pleasure, nor suffering or pain or emptiness. It is the birthing of the tragedy of beauty.